Merci, Madame Asterio. Just the top at the very top minutes should read January 26, 2026 and not 2025. Just a typo.
Okay.
Ça va?
Oui.
On a mis
C'est-
20,
c'est- c'est minime.
On va changer.
Ah oui,
We'll
c'est
change
minime. Juste faire le pas. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Declarations of conflict of interest.
There are conflicts of interest. There are none.
New business, CMHC Housing Acceleration Fund, Year 2 report and update. And Josh Davies is here to present.
Bonjour, Josh.
Good afternoon. Okay, we'll jump right in. Yeah, so we're in the second year, or just completed the second year of our 3-year Housing Accelerator Fund program. And similar to last year, our team felt that it would be good to come to council to advise on how we're progressing. Again, this program runs from a mid-November to mid-November date. So we'll be going through some of the permits and some of the successes of the program. If the housing numbers look a little different, that's why, because we're not going from a January to December. We're going from a mid-November to a mid-November ratio. So I thought I would point that out at the jump, and we'll kind of get into how things are going. So we're here to provide, again, that update on the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund. It's approximately a $17 million program that's been run out over the 4-year period with the idea of increasing our housing supply. So I'll provide a bit of a summary in terms of our housing data from year 2 and just discuss what we're looking at in year 3 as this program comes to an end in mid-November. The contribution agreement, I'm sure Council is familiar with, something we brought back, I believe, in 2023, and we've been running with it since. The total amount approximately is around $17 million, and that was after the city had received additional $1.3 million in funding for good performance. So that number was increased from the original $15 million and change that was brought forward, again, when the agreement was originally made. In terms of our action plan and how the funds are used, we can break them out generally into 3 components. One is systemic initiatives, being zoning bylaw updates, improvements to processes that help us get permits in and out the door quicker. So for example, the 4 units as of right was one that we brought forward in addition to enhancing accessory dwelling units and other housing typologies that have been quite successful since the changes were adopted. Those grant programs, I'll touch on those and how they've been performing. And we also have been using fundings for staffing. So for projects such as the municipal plan review, looking to hasn't happened yet, but looking to hire a transit coordinator and legal support. So those funds have been put to use where we've been trying as best we can to fill gaps with respect to getting that housing, getting those units on stream faster than we would it not be for this program. So in terms of our housing supply target, the supply target after the update and amended agreement to allow the city to receive additional funding was 2,569 housing units over a 3-year period, which equates to around 850 units per year. Within the growth target, there are other categories. So what they're calling the missing middle, so it would be 1,277 of those. So anything generally from a 2-unit development all the way up to a 4-story development. 1,072 units that would constitute anything that would be 5 stories and above. And this is something that we've worked through with other municipalities in the region. What multi-unit other and what missing middle means a little different between municipalities, especially if you go nationwide. But these were the terms that the city had agreed to with CMHC upon adopting that contribution agreement. And importantly, 3% of our growth target in total were meant to be affordable units. And looking for us here at the city as nonprofit housing units, we're not necessarily counting those that are CMHC market affordable. These are nonprofit units. So we're looking at a 3% target there to a total of 75 housing units over that 3-year term. So about 25 a year. We've looked a lot, again, at our systemic initiatives and infrastructure. So as Council will, I think hopefully we'll see in the spring, the Mountain Road and Worthington Avenue connection opening up to provide access to the Shanix lands. Looks like it's all done, and my understanding is it's just some dotting of I's and crossing of T's to be completed. The streamlining of the zoning bylaw, as I mentioned. We're undertaking in the municipal plan review studies of inclusionary zoning and density bonus studies, which we're in the process of reviewing with the consultant working on that file. We're working hard to get our e-permitting software launched for our initial 4 application types. And then in addition to an energy efficient design for builders to use, and the creation of new development charge areas. So for areas, for example, that will be coming like the vision lands. Areas that we've identified infrastructure and work through that costing mechanism to understand the implications or the opportunities that arise relative to the infrastructure needed to open some of these important areas up. There's some other funded action items that have come before council. So for example, the transit master plan, the surplus land strategy that we looked at, as I mentioned, other contract positions that have been in place to kind of, again, help us move things along administratively with respect to housing. So how did we do? In year 2, so again from that mid-November to mid-November of 24 to 25, the city saw a net increase of 1,323 units, which is about half of our total that we had committed to over the 3-year term, so very good news. The net increase is a result of the number of units permitted minus the number of demolitions that we would have seen. And typical demolitions that we've seen in the last couple of years are predominantly single-family houses, not units of great size. So the number is very strong. And breaking it down into that missing middle and other component, we created 767 missing middle housing units, 514 multi-housing unit other. So 767 of those 2 doors all the way up to 4 stories, and 514 units that would be 5 stories and above. Additionally, we created 40 affordable housing units, and interestingly, of that 1,323 housing units, only 42 were single unit dwellings, which is, again, I guess put us in a bit of a rhythm over the past 4 or 5 years where that number is consistently a small percentage of our total unit count. And I believe as well, and I'll look through the stats here, but we do have, since the 4 unit was passed, I believe we've had about 8 or 9 4-unit buildings constructed in the city, totaling around 36 to 40 units. And where we've had a lot of success were the semi-detached homes with basement apartments. That unit count was quite a bit higher. Began looking at that desire for ownership, and that having that third income assist to pay off the mortgage seems to have been very popular, especially in our new and emerging areas. So quite a few of those permits coming through without issue at the building permit desk. So it's been a very positive, I guess, experience to date since those changes were made, I guess, last spring. So in terms of the grant programs and how they're performing, I put a lot more detail into the council report form. But you can see that I believe as of the end of year in 25, we have allocated approximately $5.5 million to our various programs, and you can see how they're listed through there. Accessory dwelling unit grant program, nonprofit grant program, the missing middle, downtown, and our growth areas where our development charges apply. We've essentially what we have been able to do is through the incentivization of 407 units, a total number of units developed was 917. So the reason why there's a bit of a number and difference there is that if we had an apartment building being constructed off of the Shediac Road and it was 30 units, 10 of those units were being incentivized by that program. So again, we weren't able to cover every door because again, we've been, I guess, very busy and lots of opportunity, lots of interest in construction and development, but we can say that we directly contributed to 407 units, while also the offset of that is that 917 units in total have been affected positively by the various grant programs that the city has in place. In terms of looking ahead, this is the final year, so in terms of our report card with CMHC, this is the year where all of our outstanding milestones are to be completed, and really there are 2 programs, being the e-permitting program and the energy efficient design. Those are the last 2 to be fully completed. The rest are ongoing. The policy work is done. A lot of that work has been completed. So really those are the last 2 to button up. And then we're looking to hit our final unit target. And I'm happy to say that with our overall program process to date, that we are, as of the end of year 2, we were at 87% of our intended goal. which is really good news. So we're on track and meeting those targets. And just in terms of what we're looking at for year 3, just from the 1st of January to the end of February, we've already permitted an additional 263 residential housing units. So it looks like we are going to comfortably exceed our given total, so which is great news for CMHC and bodes well for our 4th year installment of funding. The funds for year 3 have been received. I did make a bit of an accounting error. It's actually not the $3,900,000 that's received. It's north of 4 now due to that additional funding that we received last year. So around $4,400,000 was received, and we're now one payment away from being completed in January of next year. In addition to those initiatives that need to be completed, we continue to invest in staffing. A lot of funds allocated to the municipal plan and zoning bylaw review process, which remains underway. And again, the key things is that in terms of our housing targets, we will exceed them, and we will even exceed that 3% target for affordable housing units. We're already at 80 so far, and 75 was the committed target in 2023. So all positive, and I think it's been a really good benefit to the city, and I think they're very beneficial to our team in terms of in this period of growth, having some extra tools available to us to help us meet, again, those targets that we had committed to. This completes my presentation. I would be more than happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Josh. There's no motion with this. Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci, Madame la Maire. Merci beaucoup, Josh. One anecdote and then one concern, I guess. The anecdote is that a 4-unit was built just behind our house on the other side of Brady. Now, Brady is a particular street. There's no residence that faces it on either side. It's sort of like a back street to Butler.
A through lot.
So you already have a name for a street, you don't need Butlerville. And the other side from Belmont is backyard. But behind our house was built recently, opened last year, a 4-unit. We have had no breaks and enters since because they face Brady.
All frontage on both sides.
Exactly.
Understood,
So there's
yeah.
one on
Yeah.
facing Butler, the other one, the only house on
Yeah, there used to be
Brady
a
Street.
laneway.
But anyways, that's an anecdote that in addition to the quantitative number of, it has a significant impact on the quality of our life. We don't have to look in our backyards every once in a while to see if there's anybody roaming around.
Good.
So just add that to your bank of knowledge that it does have qualitative benefits as much as quantitative ones. And thanks for the information. This is great. It's almost the first time that I feel comfortable about knowing the big picture of, we'll call it just housing. There's affordable housing, there's homelessness, there's the spectrum that we have in our implementation plan. So far, other than that plan, which had to be updated after 4 years, and I think will have to be updated again because there's been a lot of changes and probable impacts over the short term because of the reduction in immigration targets. So we'll see what happens with that. But may not be for me, but for the new council, it'd be nice to have the whole picture rather than piecemeal. We get a report on half funding, and then we get a report on homelessness, and then we get Rising Tide coming to council with their vision and their results. And it'd be nice to have a clearer picture on the continuum of what has been done and what is still to be done, so that we know, maybe on a 6-month reporting basis, where we're at and where we're going. That would be appreciated. And a final comment, when this comes public, I will probably, not 99% sure, make a motion that we, well, it's probably the new, but at least we start now, explore the possibility of a housing authority to see what the housing authority could do more or better. Absolutely no disrespect to you and the planning planning department, but to see if the housing authority could resolve some of the issues better or faster or bigger than our own city hall.
Yep.
So just for your information.
And one thing that's a good point well taken around all of the, I guess, the moving parts with respect to housing, because there are a lot. I think what we'll do is with our urban growth strategy, the intent now is that was completed, I believe, in 2024. We'll be providing updates to how we're going and how we're developing with relation to the urban growth strategy. So it's something that we're working on, and I expect will be a part of the planning introduction to the new council in the spring. So this is what we had committed to over the past 5 years. This is how we're tracking, so that we're all kind of at the same start line when that information comes. But no, we can certainly deal with that.
Well, the motion will probably call for staff to give the new council before budget time
Yeah.
a sort of bilan of where we're at, because like I said, the plan was adopted in 2019 and then modified in 23.
The Housing Action Plan, yeah.
Pardon?
The Housing Action Plan.
Yeah, exactly.
sorry, yeah.
But that's it's one of the big parts, right? So that has an impact on the other dominoes. But anyways, I want the new council not only to be briefed, but to be prepared.
Right.
And if they have information that says, we'll need to invest more or less or in this kind rather than that kind, given the big picture,
Yep.
it would serve them very well.
Agreed. Yeah, no trouble.
Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que... Oh, Nick, did you wish to speak? Sorry.
Yes, thank you. That's okay. Just to clarify, Councillor Bourgeois, this is not coming to public. I mean, we're in committee of the whole now. This is public, so there's nothing to ratify. So if there was a motion that you wanted to make on this, I guess now would be the time. Correct.
Do I read it? I can just give it to the clerk. There's a whole bunch of whereases, but be it therefore resolved that the city review the community implementation plan for affordable housing before the 2027 budget deliberations and identify all required revisions and updates to the plan, as well as any additional financial commitments to ensure the plan's pertinence and success during the 27 to 31 period. Be it also resolved that before the 2027 budget deliberation, the city conduct a feasibility study of a municipal housing authority that would, among other things, implement the city's affordable housing plan and manage the city's lands for public purposes for affordable housing and the city's policy on the disposition of lands for public purposes for affordable housing. So basically, an update of the plan and a feasibility study of a municipal housing authority. We might not go there, or the council might not go there because it's not feasible or it doesn't add any value. But if it does, then by the time the 2027 budget deliberations would begin, they would have that information in hand.
So we have a motion that's been moved. Could I have a seconder for the motion? Please, Councillor Butler. Did you wish to speak on the?
I just have a question.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. The only thing, and Josh, maybe you can explain this to me too, is that with Councillor Bourgeois' motion, we're talking about financial assistance. Like, are we getting out of our lane again here? And maybe Jock can say something too, is that, housing is a provincial and federal. It's not a municipal. And, we got to be very careful when we have make these motions. And I agree with that for us to have a really good overview and maybe more of a say in how we want to do it. But when it comes to finances, I just, it seems like, if we get into this, the province gives us money to do things, our tax money back to us, and then we give it back to them because we're looking after housing. So I'm just kind of wondering, what's your view on that?
I guess from an operational and from a municipal standpoint, outside of the finances, like doing a study will actually help us inform what might be the best model. So maybe it's not a financial model, maybe it's a similar to an MID type group that oversees housing within the city. The scope of the work would really be defined by, I guess, the study. So like my view, and I guess in hearing the motion, would be that we would look at a housing authority, see what legislative ability we do or we do not have to operate one, and what type of models could work, ultimately coming forward to council with maybe 3 or 4 scenarios of different models, small, medium, big, large, and how they may or may not fit. Ultimately, a background study that would provide whatever the recommendation would be at the time to that council. That's how I would envision it. But again, to your point, not meddling or not getting into other levels of governmental responsibility, that would be part of the study, in my view, in terms of, again, especially with the financial component, what would that model look like for Moncton from a legislative perspective and also from a potential operating one as well?
Yeah, because, you know, when you were giving your report, I kept hearing the word, like, we built this and we built that. It kind of like, if this was out in public, people would say, the city of Moncton is building these houses. It's really not. We have to make sure that they understand that, you know, we're helping with legislation, we're helping with planning.
Yep.
But the financial part is not coming from us. I guess that's my biggest fear here. I don't want, myself personally as a councillor, the rest might disagree, but I do not want to get into having to run housing for the province. So in other words, you know, the province says, well, okay, if he's got this authority, why not we just give you some money and you just look after it? Well, that, you know,
Right.
that we have enough, you know, I know from talking to people in your department, that, you know, you guys are busy enough, and it's really hard to get planners.
Yep.
And it puts extra, I would say, pressure on our staff to try to get these things done. So I agree that we should have Councillor Bourgeois' motion. It makes sense until we get to the finances. I want to make sure that we are absolutely just going to be the overseers of the provincial money.
Could be, yeah, and that's what I think the study would investigate is from a resource perspective, whether it's money or bodies, like that. How would that all shape out, and what would it take to do it? I think would be the real big part of it.
Well, I guess I'd ask Councillor Bourgeois, is that his intention with the motion?
My intention is to help the next council think this through with complete information. First of all, not just a piecemeal, but we have a big picture view. But secondarily, this housing authority, we used to have, that was the only, in the old Municipalities Act, it was the only social issue authority we had. We could have established a housing authority before. It was recommended twice by the Social Inclusion Committee in 2010. Paul, the mayor is the only person who remembers that. It was repeated during the Social Inclusion Summit of 2016, but it didn't seem to go anywhere. It just sort of fell by the wayside. It's come again in the discussion of the Planning Committee as well. So let's look at it to see what it would involve. I don't want the next council to come budget deliberations in 2027 and say, oh, well, the planning committee comes out with a recommendation and we'll have to wait another year for the budget time to see if establishing a housing authority is feasible or not, et cetera. I think the affordable housing is right around us. It has been for a couple of years, and it's just going to go bigger as we move along. If the next council isn't prepared with all the information, they'll have a tough time making a decision. As for the financing, I completely agree with you. Hopefully, there is no such thing as city involvement, like significant, you know, if we have to fund this MID equivalent for affordable housing at, I don't know, meetings and stuff like that for a few $1,000s a year, it's not an issue. If it's millions of dollars a year, it's a completely different ballgame. But at least council, next council in November 26 for the budget year 27 will know what they're looking at, and they won't have to wait another year.
Yeah, I just think that we have to make all of that very clear, because I don't want the provincial government catch on and say, okay, well, let's give it all back to the city of Moncton as a pilot project, and then we get stuck with it and we don't have the staff and putting a lot of pressure on them, so.
Completely agree. I just want to get the council informed of the big picture, including Housing Authority, for the way move. And it'll be up to them to move forward the way they see fit.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Merci, merci, Conseiller Bourgeois, Conseiller Butler. Do we need to read the motion again, or can we show it on the screen for council to vote on it? Conseiller Bourgeois, do you have a copy that is typed that you could send to the city clerk? You don't have one? Okay. C'est bon. Okay. Okay. Parfait. You're doing great, Diane. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so just on that point, because, because your motion relates to an item that we're talking about, it doesn't require a notice of motion, you can make the motion so we can deal with it today. Does not require a notice of motion.
Like, I really didn't think I just wanted to give you a heads up that it was coming, since it wasn't going to be ratified in public. We're not going to see it.
So we have to vote on it. Right, okay. Kevin, you could entertain us now if you want. It's great.
Absolutely.
Ask if you need.
Okay.
Excuse.
Bravo. Merci. Merci. Do you want to read it, Diane?
Oh, okay. So before the 2017 budget resolved that the city review the community implementation plan for affordable housing before the 2027 budget deliberation and identify all required revision and update to the plan, as well as any additional financial commitment to ensure the plan's pertinence and success during the 2027-2031 period. Be it also resolved that before the 2027 budget deliberation, the city conduct a feasible study of municipal housing authority that among other things, implement the city affordable housing plan and manage the city land for public purpose for affordable housing and the city's policy on disposal of the lands for public purpose for affordable housing.
Thank you, Diane. So,
Shouldn't be 2027.
yes, before the 2027 budget, right?
Okay.
I think you can remove that and say be it resolved.
Wait.
Yeah, we'll move. Oh, yeah,
Where did I-
just start
be it
there and
resolved.
take out before the 2027 budget. Just say be it therefore resolved. Take out that also, before the, yeah. Take out before, yeah, and say be it therefore resolved.
First line should be it resolved.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, sorry. Very good.
Oui,
Yep.
merci beaucoup, Diane.
Can I just-
Did you, yes, go ahead.
Just want to make a comment. Perhaps Elaine may want to comment here, but just looking at this, we can do our best to try to meet the timeline. I just want to advise council that we may have to come back to the new council if this timeline can't be met. I think it's fairly aggressive to have all of this done before the 2027 budget deliberations.
My intention was that you hire a consultant. I don't expect staff to do this.
Elaine?
Yes, thank you. Actually, we are looking at the needs and the gaps of around housing and looking at the plan, updating the plan, a lot of what's in here. So whether it would be done with a new resource in-house consultant, we'll have to look at it. And I guess that we can come back to council, like Nick mentioned, to see if we can meet the timeline or not with those resources.
Oui, conseiller Bourgeois.
You try your best. But we did hire a consultant firm to do the 2019 gap analysis and plan, and we hired, I think, the same firm 4 years later to do the update. So I'm pretty sure that same firm could do a follow-up and update again, and 4 years later. The study of a housing authority, however, ça c'est à différentes paires de manches, là. C'est pas à notre personnel de faire l'étude de faisabilité. Ça prendra un expert conseil en quelque part, là. Ils peuvent-ils le faire dans 6 mois? Bonne chance, essayez votre mieux, mais ça aiderait le nouveau conseil. Merci.
Si on va avec un consultant, on devra identifier le besoin en ressources financières pour l'étude. On reviendra à ce moment-là avec l'estimé.
Merci. Conseillère Adjad.
Merci, Madame la Maire. So do we actually have a budget for this going forward at this time?
We would not have anything specifically identified for this, no. So we'll have to look at if there's anything internally that we could redistribute, or if council chooses to fund it otherwise with their fund, their contingency.
I prefer to have the report from staff with regards to how we proceed on having a study and examining this, rather than just presenting this in a resolution. I'll be voting against it.
Merci, conseillère Adjad. Conseiller Bourgeois.
Council contingency. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci beaucoup. We will go to the vote. So is the voting going as planned, or? Ah, c'est beau. Merci beaucoup. Motion carried. 3 nay votes, Councillor Adjad, Conseiller Kingston, and Conseillère Leblanc. Merci. Madame la greffière.
Up next is the designation of municipal land and other affected area-based conservation measures, and we have Mark Kamoa.
Bonjour, Marc.
With our giant package here. Thank you. So today I'm here to discuss the designation of municipal land as other effective area-based conservation measures. We're here to review the proposed conservation recognition agreement that we will be, or potentially entering with the province of New Brunswick. You'll find that in attachment A. This identifies a list of municipal properties representing 3,763 or 68 hectares, for recognition as OECMs for their inclusion in the Canadian Protected and Conserved Areas Database. That's a big word, yes. Just to give you a little background, in March of last year, a year ago, we council entered into a project support agreement with the Fundy Biosphere region, which is also attached, stating that the city would evaluate several of its green spaces properties using the Pathway to Canada Target 1 Decision Support Tool, which we'll be referring as a DST, in cooperation with the Fundy Biosphere, to determine if such lands may qualify as OECMs, and if they do, an appropriate management plan will be prepared for them, and the subject lands will be submitted for recording in CPCAD. So what is an OECM? Just clearly, an OECM is an area of land or water with clearly defined boundaries, which is managed in a way that results in conservation of the ecosystems, natural habitat, and species in their surroundings. So is it a protected area? No, it's not as a protected area as the federal database has. It's a different classification. So by definition, it's not a protected area. It's these sites deliver the effective, what's considered in situ conservation of biodiversity. Protected areas have a primary purpose of protecting biodiversity. OECMs generally not, it's not the primary reason. So is it a legal designation? No. So there's no legislation or regulation specific to OECMs in Canada. Rather just a bunch of mechanisms or a combination of those that restrict or control activities that would negatively impact biodiversity. So recognition of an OECM does not result in any policy or regulatory restrictions for us either. And although it's not the intent, properties can be removed from the database if required. So what does it mean to recognize these lands as OECMs? We would be entering into a recognition agreement with the province and including it in that database, that national database. And that's a repository used for reporting nationally and internationally on Canada's Protected and Conserved Areas Network. It's something that the federal government had created to make sure that they can bring up their numbers on protected areas and lands that are currently being protected but aren't necessarily in the conserved database, for example. So further information on all the OECM designation is in your package under attachment C. There's a big question and answers document in there that has lots of information if you want to look at it more as well. So the Fundy Biosphere region has reviewed the list of properties with city staff and evaluated them using that decision support tool. This evaluation was based on specific criteria that need to be met in order to meet the requirements of an OECM. And it demonstrated that we currently have 8 locations that meet those criteria, including many of our parks and the properties in the Turtle Creek watershed. So further analysis on those spaces, there's lots of information that was gathered. It's in the Conservation Spaces Review and Recommendations document. That's also in attachment D. Lots of information in there. It was a thorough analysis by the Fundy Biosphere region along with our staff. We spoke to you about a year ago about this, so it's been a long time coming. You'll note in the maps as well, in that review and recommendations document, that not all the sites that we reviewed are proposed for entering in this database. So 3 of the sites reviewed did not qualify as OECMs at this time, although they could qualify if the recommendations identified in the document would be implemented. Properties that staff are recommending to go forward for registration are attached in the map that is in Schedule A and B of the agreement with the province. All those proposed sites were reviewed and delineated with future growth and changes to potential zoning or use in mind, and exclusions were done and limited on those maps and those sites to ensure the land we are conserving will not need to be adjusted in the future or the near future or to best of our knowledge at this time, basically. As a requirement in the process to recognize these sites as OECMs, beyond that conservation recognition agreement, mechanisms must be put in place that support long-term effective management for each of the sites. So examples of mechanisms we currently have in place for them, for example, are the Irishtown Nature Park Management Plan, Turtle Creek studies. We have specific management plans for these. These existing protections are all defined in that decision support tool as well. All the details are there. But understanding this, it was advised that an additional mission statements would be approved to act as another mechanism to support the long-term conservation. And those 2 mission statements are attached under E and F under the attachments. It's important to note that we are agreeing to this in this agreement, and these mission statements, they simply reflect what we're already doing operationally. For example, our Irishtown Nature Park fit perfectly within this. It's a land that we're conserving anyway. We had protections in place to begin with. So, and it also reflects our strategic plan's environmental mission to protect and enhance the environment, and that key action item to protect and enhance our surface water resources, specifically Turtle Creek. So there are other examples of OECMs designated in New Brunswick, such as Mill Creek Nature Park, which is right across the river. Here in Riverview, they have gone through this process and protected it as an OECM. That was the first one in New Brunswick, I believe. City of St. John is also working with the Nature Conservancy of Canada to recognize some of their land, as well as town of Salisbury, for example. So their wetland park, they're looking to go through this process as well. The province is very excited to collaborate with the city on conserving these lands because these efforts contribute directly to their shared landscape initiative led by DNR. And DNR is also exploring the possibility of incentivizing municipalities and other private landowners to maintain these conservation areas. So they're looking at options such as reducing property taxation if we were to go ahead and move these as OECMs. A letter of support from Honorable John Herron, Provincial Minister of Natural Resources, is also included in your last attachment G. So the recommendation that I'm bringing forth today is that the City of Moncton approve entering into a conservation recognition agreement with the province of New Brunswick, recognizing the properties listed by PID in Schedule A of the agreement as other effective area-based conservation measures, permitting the Department of Natural Resources to report these lands as to the federal government for inclusion in the Canadian Protected and Conserved Areas Database, approve the watershed management and municipal park management mission statements, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute all necessary documents and to affix the corporate seal thereto. Are there any questions?
Merci beaucoup, Marc. We have a motion, so Conseiller Bourgeois, do you wish to move the motion? Second.
I have questions.
Oui, Conseiller Richard, second. C'est beau, allez-y, Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la maire. Merci beaucoup pour la présentation, Monsieur Comeau. Ça me fait énormément plaisir de faire la résolution. J'ai l'impression que le parc régional des terrains d'avenir, Visions Park, ça sera le fait saillant du Conseil de 21-26. Je remercie les membres du Conseil qui, jusqu'à maintenant, ont été unanimes dans leur appui à ce parc-là. Surtout le conseiller Richard, qui représente bien le quartier 4. Mais j'ai quelques questions. Je crois qu'on a dépensé comme conseil 1 million, je ne sais pas si c'est à toi ou à Jacques que je dirige la question, mais 1 million pour l'achat de terrain additionnel, ou peut-être Hélène, je ne sais pas trop qui. Là. Donc, ça serait 500 000 $ de récupération ou remboursement de ce million-là?
Exactement.
OK. Deuxième question. T'as semblé écarter le concept de conservation area, que c'est pas une conservation area. Mais dans l'entente, je sais pas, l'attachment, ça parle de conservation, which the municipality shall designate as a conservation area. So, je suis un petit peu confus là, savoir pourquoi qu'on mélange les choses. C'est-tu moi qui comprends mal?
Je pense que c'est plus semantics. On est juste en train de désigner ça comme des OECMs. Un conservation area, c'est une désignation fédérale qui est complètement différente.
Non, j'ai compris ça. Mais dans l'entente, in exchange for the funding, the municipality shall designate as a conservation area, the park land. So, je veux m'assurer que je comprends pas je comprends la distinction entre les deux contextes, mais on semble écarter, on dit c'est pas un conservation area, mais là, dans la clause 2A, ça dit the municipality shall designate as a conservation area, with the intention of permanently setting it aside for the purpose of conserving the biological diversity present therein.
OK. Ça, on peut vérifier sur... Il faut faire sûr qu'il n'y a pas de distinction, ou il y a une distinction entre un conserved area au niveau fédéral avec ça. On peut utiliser un différent langage, je pense.
Ben, peut-être, mais ici, ça nous oblige The
Oui.
municipality shall
Oui.
designate. On
Yeah.
signe un document qui dit qu'on va le désigner. Moi, ça me dérange pas d'une façon ou d'une autre, là.
Yeah.
Mais je veux juste m'assurer qu'on, tu sais, en écartant, en partant l'affaire de conservation area, mais après ça, on l'inclut dans l'entente, ça me paraît,
Oui.
ça me confond, en tout cas. Dernier commentaire, Josh, I'm not sure if this is too minutia for the planning committee, but should we share these kinds of designated area, if you haven't already, conservation areas, OECM, should they be considering that, or is it too minutia?
I wouldn't say it's too minutia, but the way that the zoning, again, as Mark laid out, a lot of those areas are already zoned for conservation today. If anything, when we look at these maps, if our zoning doesn't correspond, then as through the plan review, we will look at the zoning and making sure that whether we need to tighten them up or change them, that would be the time for that. But it's useful information. If it goes through, gets passed, we can certainly let them know that on the conservation side, this is some recent steps the city has taken.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Madame le maire.
Merci, conseiller Bourgeois. Conseiller Richard.
Merci, Maire Esterio. Merci, Marc, pour la présentation. And thanks to Councilor Bourgeois on the vision lands. But are they actually included in this?
No, just because we do not have the land purchased, we don't have a signed purchase and sale agreement yet. So we can't delineate the land and put it in as a document until we own the land. So
would be jumping-
that will be coming at a council meeting near you.
But that would be.
Yes, that would be a
Coming.
next step. We will include this as well as a separate part of the package.
Yeah,
And,
okay, great. Thanks for
It would be the
clarification.
exact same activity and the same exercise of
Yep.
protecting that land as well.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Merci beaucoup.
We tried to get it in, but just the timing didn't work.
We'll get it.
Okay.
Merci.
Merci, conseiller Richard. I don't see any other questions. I do have a question, Marc.
Oui.
Elle est un peu naïve, ma question. A few years ago, we had a long debate with council on Skipper Jack's. And Skipper Jack's, ça s'appelle, le restaurant?
Oui.
And all the infrastructures. And so would this protect us from going through this type of exercise again?
Dan, you know a little bit more about how close that land is to that property? They're not, eh? So, yeah, the land that we're looking at, that's Mapleton? No. That, right behind Skipper Jack's in that area is not included in this, I don't believe, no.
So why did we go through all of that if we're not obligated to protecting? Is it the city that,
Somebody found a wood turtle.
come on,
Somebody found a wood turtle.
I can't hear, so I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Yeah, I think I can take a stab at that. So it was not my file, but I do remember it well, was that I believe the issue at the time was that a lot of that property was, there was private property that had conservation zoning on it, and the property owner wished to extend the commercial use that was on the property. So it's a bit of a different dynamic where the majority, if not all of the land being included here is city-owned land. So we're not putting any OECM on private property that we don't own. So those little nuances we're working through in the plan review just to make sure that we're tightening those things up so we're not having to kind of slug it out here at council. But those are that would be that avenue for that. The OECM would not stop from that, but we're working on that under a different channel.
Merci beaucoup. So hopefully this will protect us from going through this all over again.
Technically, that landowner could, whoever is a private landowner there, they could go through this process and try and protect it, but yeah, we were only including city-owned land here.
C'est bon, Marc. Merci beaucoup. Donc there are no other questions, so we will go to the vote. Motion carried. Conseiller Léger, did you vote? Okay, so the decision is unanimous. Merci. In favor.
Thank you.
Merci, Marc.
See.
That's it. That's the agenda for today. Oh my, we still have 3 hours to go to make it for 5. C'est beau, merci, merci beaucoup. Merci à tous.